Okay. Hi, welcome everyone. My name is Jamie Heston, and I am a former board member, current volunteer with the Homeschool Association of California, and tonight is File Your PSA with HSC. So we are going to sort of review the record keeping and just sort of what the PSA and private schools are all about. And then we will get to the form and I will pull up our instructions that we've written and sort of line by line instructions. And we'll have one window up with the instructions and one window up with the form. And we'll sort of go through it step by step. And so you can go ahead and have your own window up with me and be filing it at the same time, or you can just sort of take it all in, take notes and then file it later. It's totally up to you. You have all the way from the 1st through the 15th to file it. So no rush. You don't have to do it right this second. Okay. All righty. So let's go ahead and get started. For starters, I just want to review the education code briefly. And that is Education Code 48222, which talks about the requirements for private schools. Pretty basic. To be a private school, you must be a full-time day school. The teaching must be done by persons capable of teaching, and that is not defined, which is how someone with just a high school diploma can teach their children and homeschool, do home education. And instruction must be made in the English language, and that does not mean that you can't also speak a second language or learn a second language. It just means that your kids should end up being able to speak English and write and read in English as well as their possibly other language that you're using. And then instruction must be offered in the several branches of study that are required to be taught in the public schools. So again, the word is offered. So you may or may not be doing any one of the branches at any given time, depending on how you're structuring your school. We have a lot of people who unschool, which is child-led learning, and it might not look like what public schools do, but it still can qualify and you can be complying by just doing things in a different way than public schools do. So the question does arise sometimes as to these requirements, that if state officials have the right to verify your school. And it is important to know that in the education code, it does talk about the fact that public schools or your district school does have the right to verify your private school affidavit after it's been filed. They don't have the right to reject it or accept it. They simply have the right to check and see that you have filed it so that they can sort of mark your child, sort of off their list of, okay, so they're not enrolled in our school anymore. They've been handed off to another actual school because you have created a small private school and you have filed that private school affidavit. Therefore, they can sort of rest assured that there's been a handoff of education of the student. So just know that upon unenrolling from your previous school, it's possible they may ask you for a copy of the private school affidavit. They do not need an actual copy of all of your information. What you would be giving them is the confirmation email that you get once you hit submit. When you do file this private school affidavit, it goes into a database with 35,000 or more others, and it's automatically sent to you, this confirmation, just almost immediately after you hit submit. You get this confirmation email. The other cool thing is that once you filed it one time, and this is all online, so this form is completely online. Once you have filed it online, the next year, you'll actually get an email a couple of weeks ahead of the filing period, which will be sort of a reminder to you that if you're continuing to be a private school in the coming school year, here's all your information, and you have a code that you can input. And the cool thing about that, and this is sort of a new thing that they just started a couple of years ago, the cool thing about that is that you can put that code in and it will retrieve a lot of your information so that you don't have to be typing in your name and address, 27 times on the form. It'll pre-fill a lot of the information. If for some reason you've lost that email or this is your first time filing, you'll select the option to just sort of start fresh, and that's fine too. It's no big deal. It just saves you some time. There's no problem with not having that old code or misplacing that email. There's no problem with that whatsoever. It's just that, they won't have pre-filled some information for you. So first things first, you always want to unenroll from the previous school. So you want to make sure that that has taken place. I am actually going to give you this PDF as well. So I'm going to write in the, hold on one second. So I'm going to write in the chat and I'm going to sort of say it right now too, that if you go to tinyurl.com/PSA with HSC, okay, so tinyurl.com/PSA with HSC, you will get this presentation. And anything that's underlined or sort of bolded in this blue color is going to be a link you can click on. So the first thing you're going to do is unenroll from your previous school if you've not done this already. If this is something you're thinking about doing, you'll always unenroll first. So this will link to a sample letter. You can do email, and you can just make sure you get a confirmation that they understand that you're not coming back, right? So you don't need to unenroll if you've unenrolled previously. If this is your second time filing the private school affidavit, for instance, you obviously don't need to unenroll from anywhere. You're just unenrolling if this is the first time ever that you're filing the PSA and you haven't already unenrolled. A lot of people will unenroll over the summer and then begin homeschooling, you know, declare themselves to be a small private school, keep a few things on file, and you've just been waiting for this filing period to do the last step of being compliant with being a private school. So if you haven't unenrolled yet, though, or you're brand new to homeschooling and you're thinking of unenrolling your child, this is what you would do. You would unenroll, okay? So, and oh, a quick thing too, because I see in the chat there's some clarification needed. If your child has not been enrolled anywhere else, then you don't need to unenroll from anywhere. You're not on anybody's radar. So, okay. So there is a sample letter here, this hsc.org/PSA info. There is a sample letter there to unenroll. And like I said before, the schools may ask you for your PSA to confirm enrollment in the new school. And again, you're just going to give them that confirmation email that you get after you hit submit on the PSA. The second step would be requesting records from your old school if you want them. It's typical that any new school would go back and request the records, but you're not required to. You don't have to. But if you'd like to, again, at that same link is information about how to request the records. The next thing you need to think about before we file the PSA tonight is what your school name is going to be. Okay, your school name should be ideally something serious sounding. Think about it being on your child's transcript or on their diploma someday. So right now, picking something whimsical or fun might be appealing, and I understand that, but also consider what your 18-year-old someday will think about that name when they do need to maybe show a potential employer. So just think about that. I've heard Happy Day School in the past and kind of some whimsical and fun things, but think about it. The name of my school was Delano Bay Academy. So that's what we used all along. It was just happened to be a vacation spot we went to called Delano Bay. So that's what we picked. You can change the name from year to year. There's even a spot you'll see as we file the PSA. There's a spot to say, did you have a different name last year? So you could always do one name for a while and then change it to something else. And you don't need to worry about duplicating anybody else because it's associated with your address. It's not a business, you don't need a business license. You don't need to worry about duplicating names, nothing like that. Another thing to think about too is if you happen to have 6 or more children, then you are going to want to perhaps create 2 schools, maybe one school for the younger children and one for the older children. Because if you have 6 or more, you will be caught up in the system that is for the larger private schools and the brick and mortar private schools. And you will then be required to formally show or formally report your vaccination records on a website called Shots for Schools. And you're not going to want to have to do that, right? You're going to want to keep your information private. So create 2 schools if you have 6 or more children. The other thing really quickly too, is that if you have a kindergartner this year, you do not need to file the PSA. You can teach kindergarten, your child's going to learn, you're going to do homeschooling things with them, but you don't need the legal structure. So let's say you have a kindergartner and a 2nd grader, just file it and put the information for the 2nd grader on the PSA. You don't need it for a kindergartner. You could, nobody's going to come and do anything bad to you if you do. There's no problem per se doing it, but here's kind of the Homeschool Association of California's take on that. We don't want the government ever thinking, hey, everybody files for kindergarten kindergarten anyways, let's make it mandatory. And this is a real concern because they actually just tried to do this. The legislature just passed a law that, or they passed a law and they voted on a law saying, yes, we want kindergarten to be compulsory. However, the governor vetoed it because of cost. We have nothing against kindergarten per se. We want parents to have the choice to send their child to kindergarten or not, right? Whether that's homeschooling or whether that's public schooling, we want parents to have that choice about their 5-year-old and what to do with their 5-year-old in terms of their education. So if everybody is just filing for kindergarten anyways, just because it sounded fun, then in that case, they could get the idea that, oh, it's no problem to make this mandatory and make everyone have to. So we'd rather have parents keep the choice. So do not file a PSA for your 5-year-old. You will teach them kindergarten or first grade or whatever level they're at. Don't worry about what level they're at. For the PSA, first grade through 12th grade, that's all you're filing for. And the PSA only reflects the grade and sort of the age grade level of your child. It doesn't reflect what work they're doing. So they could be a first grader on paper, but be doing 3rd grade work. It's really kind of neither here nor there what's on the PSA. Just kind of follow along with their age related grade until you have some reason to change it later on. You have lots of time later on. Okay. So yeah, and if for any reason you want to change your name, you absolutely can, even if it's just to change one word. Another cool thing. Oh, actually, let's go on with this thing, and we'll go to some other information that's being talked about in the chat in a moment. So you're going to pick your school name before you file the PSA. Make sure you have that handy. That's kind of the only thing you really need to think about before you file. We're going to have the instructions up in one window and the PSA up in another window. So here are the links for those, but I'm going to navigate to these when we get started. So you don't need to write these down right now. You can kind of watch me do it and follow along with me. Okay. Alrighty. So the private school affidavit is filed every year between the 1st and the 15th, or when a school is formed. So if you're just kind of thinking about it right now, if you're just considering filing the private school affidavit and homeschooling, but you haven't completely committed to wanting to file the private school affidavit and homeschool your kids, and you're on the fence still, if you miss this window, it's no big deal. This is the window for established schools. So if you are a school that is in existence right now because you unenrolled your children, maybe a month ago or a few weeks ago, and you've just been waiting for this filing period to come around, you are filing right now. Or you are a school that's been in existence for a while, so you are filing right now. After the 15th, the private school affidavit is up all year long. So when you come to homeschooling, whether that's November, December, January, February, March, April, May, that is when you will unenroll, keep a few things on file, and file the PSA sort of all in one day. Okay. So here are the records that you're going to keep on file that I sort of talked about. First of all, you're going to keep attendance, which could be a cheap calendar on the wall, because you're only going to mark when your child is absent. When your child is homeschooling, they are learning every day. They are really never absent, not really. So you will just keep any sort of format. It doesn't matter. Keep it separate from anything else. I've heard of some people wanting to maybe keep attendance on like their daily journal. Don't do that, because if someone were to knock on your door and say, hey, I want to have proof that you are educating your child and complying with the compulsory education law, you will show them your private school affidavit and your attendance records. So you don't want your attendance records combined with anything else, because then you're handing over all of that information. So your attendance could be an Excel file with all the days of the year saying, Susie Q's, attendance for this school year and all of the dates, and then they're just blank because you only put an X when they are absent. If they are present, it's blank. So a cheap calendar on the wall also works, okay? You also keep a record of the teacher qualifications. One family member can file the private school affidavit. Some people like to say, oh, I'm the teacher and my husband's the administrator. Totally fine. You can totally do that, but it's only necessary that one person file it. One person can be the teacher and the administrator and the record keeper. So whoever that teacher is on the PSA, you should have in your files the teacher qualifications. And what's so cool is that private schools get to determine what their teacher qualifications are. So whatever you have is perfect. You could put that you graduated from the School of Life or from high school or from college, or a resume works. Anything along those lines on the computer in a physical folder, doesn't matter, pick one, and that's your homeschool file. Another piece of paper that you need is a list of subjects offered. Remember earlier when I said that in the private school affidavit law, in the code, in the education code, it actually says that we need to offer equivalent subject areas to public schools. So you're going to have a piece of paper that says what your school offers. So just assume your school is K or is first grade through 12th grade. What would you offer? You would offer everything from math, science, language arts, reading, writing, PE, foreign language, music, arts and crafts, everything, just everything in the kitchen sink that you can think of. You can certainly do a search on California Department of Education 12th grade requirements or something like that if you have a 12th grader, for instance. But you don't have to. You could literally just make a list. This is a list that likely no one is ever going to see, along with your teacher qualifications, attendance, and all the other records you keep. Likely no one will ever see these, but in order to be compliant with being a private school, these are things you're going to keep on file. Okay, so a list of subjects offered. So if my school is called Delano Bay Academy, I'm going to have a piece of paper that says Delano Bay Academy offers the following subjects. And I'll just have a long list. You will do this one time, put it in a file, and throw it away when they're 18. Okay. The next thing you keep on file is their immunizations. And that is just whatever they are. Okay. As a private school, your child doesn't have to be immunized. It's just whatever they are. So it's full, partial, absent, you have a waiver, it doesn't matter. Whatever that is, just have a record of it somewhere in your home, okay, in your homeschool file, near your homeschool file. Okay, just keep a record of it. And lastly, of course, you'll file the private school affidavit each year between the 1st and the 15th. And this is just a notification to the state that you exist. It is not approval of your school in any way, shape, or form. It does not create your school. It's just, hey, I'm here, just so you know, this is how many students I have enrolled. That's it, okay? So one thing to note is that a couple of years ago, they edited the PSA and they made it all super fancy, and it's on this, it's all online. And I mean, it was always online before, but it was one big form before, and now it's like a software program where you answer one question, then it goes to the next page. So it's kind of cool, and it is editable. So when you get that confirmation code, that email right after hitting submit, you're going to have a code that allows you to go back into it. So if your address changed or you added a child, you could go do that. However, you don't have to. Even the California Department of Education on their website says this is a snapshot in time of the moment you created your school and filed that PSA. So it's just a moment in time. If something changed later, so be it. You'll fix it on the next one. Okay. So don't feel like you need to go in and edit it, but it is editable if you need to. Okay. Like think about a large brick and mortar private school with 1,000 students. They're not going to go update the PSA every time a student leaves and comes, or a teacher leaves or comes in, or, et cetera, right? So they're not going to do that. And you don't have to either, even though you've only got maybe 1 or 2 students. Okay. So it is editable, but you don't have to use it. Okay, the other thing is to remember, as I've said before, that you are the teacher, you are the administrator, and you are the record keeper. So only one person need file it. Even if you're a divorced family and you're the one parent who's in charge of sort of education, you can file it. And like I said, you certainly can include another person on there, but you would not include someone you're hiring. You wouldn't include, a part-time teacher or someone you're using for Taekwondo or something like that. You're just creating your school. And your school outside of that private school affidavit can hire teachers and do things, hire vendors and hire teachers and attend classes and do all kinds of things, but that's not part of your school. Those are resources you use. So it's just you are the administrator, you are the record keeper, you are the teacher, you're all those things. So you put your name and your address in a bunch of times on this form, and you'll see when we get to it. So you decide upon calendar, your vacations, your curriculum, your schedule, etc. The government has no say in how you run your school other than what I've previously mentioned, okay? And you will decide what constitutes enough learning year over year for promotion and graduation, and you'll issue a diploma and you'll issue transcripts and all of that. I am hosting a Homeschool 101 this Thursday at 7 p.m. So you can, wherever you found this, you can go back to that same website. hsc.org/quick guide is a great place to go for the current Homeschool 101. So if you happen to be watching this recording and October 6th has passed, go ahead and go to hsc.org/quick quick guide, and you will find a link to sign up for whatever the current Homeschool 101 session upcoming is. And you can sit in on that, and I will go over all of this in much more detail and much more information about how to homeschool, okay? So there are other what I call recommended but not required records. So what I've gone over so far, that's it. You're a private school. This is what you keep on file. You file the PSA every year, and that's it. You're done. There are no other record keeping requirements by law. However, I suggest that you go ahead and you keep records about what you're doing, especially if you're like the main parent doing the educating and the other parent is less involved because they're working full time perhaps. Then you know, keeping sort of a tabs on what you've been doing, maybe in some sort of a record book or daily journal or a little, you know, monthly calendar that you kind of just jot down what we did or where we went or what books we're reading. I think that's great information to keep. And certainly you want to do that if you're in high school. So you want to keep track of all of that, even on your computer in a folder, you know, per semester, even of what you've been working on, what your child's been doing, you know, grabbing the syllabus from classes that they take and things like that. So you have that information in order to perhaps create a transcript or report card or something like that. And I go over all of this in the Homeschool 101. So if you're feeling like you need more information about that type of thing, definitely come to one of the Homeschool 101s, okay? All right, so I'm going to put a quick plug in for HSC. HSC puts on filing parties and Homeschool 101s for free. We have campouts. We have a conference every year. We have information and support and connection and other Zooms that we do on other topics for our members. We do a lot of homeschooling advocacy, and we watch the legislation to see what's going on there to make sure that homeschooling stays legal and free for everyone. So if you are so inclined, please do become a member and support our work. Okay. So that's it for the advertising. I happen to be a homeschool consultant as well. So I have my website on here, and I have HSC's websites as well. So please take note of those. And thank you so much for coming today. We're going to go ahead and move on to filing the private school affidavit at this point. I'm going to stop sharing this particular slideshow, and we're going to go to so where I'm going to take you from is we're going to start with the hsc.org/quick guide page, and you can all sort of navigate with me from there. Okay, one moment here. Oh, hold on one moment. I need to get out of that. Okay. All right. Can everyone see this page that you know, has all the red and blue buttons on it? So we have the quick start guide. So we are on the quick start guide, and I'm just going to scroll down a little bit until we get on the left hand side. You can see the instructions for kind of what I've talked about before, how we're going to unenroll, and we're going to establish our private school, and we're going to file this private school affidavit. So in number 2 here, we have 2 links. We have the PSA, and we also have the instructions. So I am going to pull up the PSA. Can everyone see this? The California Department of Education? Thank you. Thank you for the thumbs up, Rochelle. Appreciate that. You're top on my list on my screen here. Okay, great. So you're going to scroll down a little bit to that private school affidavit, and we're going to click on that. Okay. So now I've got that open. So I'm going to really quickly go back to that quick start guide though, because I also want to get the instructions up. So I'm going to click on the instructions, which was that word here. And the instructions are here. So, so we're going to kind of go back and forth a little bit. Okay. So you can have the instructions up because you might be able to do more windows than I can very easily, but the instructions are all here and they are line by line. So as you are establishing your school, we're going to click on, I'm going to click on English, but there also is Spanish here. Okay. And on this page, oops, I need to update that to say it's for the 2022-2023 school year. But these are correct. I have actually updated these based on the current form. So we're going to scroll down. So number one here, hopefully everybody can see this. It says obviously the name of the school. And we talked about that a little bit, right? So I'm going to go back to the private school affidavit. All right, so we're going to scroll down. And the first thing that we're going to click on, can anybody see this actually? Is this sharing? That everybody can see the PSA? Okay, so I'm not sure the person who's in the chat and not able to see, I'm not sure why. You might refresh or get out and get back in. Not sure why you're not able to see if everybody else can see. Makiba, are you able to see this? Okay, you're able to see the PSA? Okay, great. Okay. Okay, great. Okay, wonderful. Okay, so we're going to click on yes, that you're creating a full-time private school. So that's pretty basic. And we're just going to go to next. Okay. Now I did not file last year because my kids have graduated and are at college. So I'm going to say proceed with a blank affidavit. If it's your first time, that's what you will select as well. If you are filing with your code that you have, then you would click on yes. So I'm going to go ahead and click no. If you have yes, go ahead and do that, and you'll have an extra step of putting your code in, but you can certainly select no and do this with me. That's totally fine. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is the name of your school, right? So you're going to pick your name. So my school name was Delano Bay Academy, and luckily it saved it for me. So go ahead and put in the name of your school. You do not get a CDS code. As a school that has less than 5 students in it, you will not receive a code. So that's why it says not applicable here. My county happens to be Alameda County. You, of course, will put your county in. And I happen to know that my district is New Haven, but you will need to pick yours and figure out what your school district is. So if you don't know that right now, don't worry about it. You can follow along with me and figure that out later. But you will be putting in your school district. You're not going, but they do want to stay this, they want you to put in your school district for sort of accounting purposes. They're seeing how many people are filing PSAs in various districts, right? Okay, so yeah, and for your name again, just to kind of talk about that school name again, right? Something serious sounding, something that doesn't include your name in it or your street name, something serious sounding. Again, with the understanding that you could pick something whimsical now and change it later when they are going off to high school and you need it to be more serious, right? So that's totally fine. You do get the option to change it. So the HSC, if you look at the instructions for HSC, we do talk about how, even if you have all girls or even if you have all boys, you never know, you might adopt, you might have another child. I mean, who knows? We just think it's easier to mark co-educational. Okay, so go ahead and mark co-educational. And you are a day-only school, which kind of seems funny because your kids sleep at your house, but you are not a residential boarding school. You are a day-only school. You're only doing the education technically during the day, even though homeschooling can happen at any time. Now, this one trips everybody up. You are going to put no. I don't even need to know if your child needs or uses special education. I can just let you know that you need to mark no for special education because your school does not provide special education. You are not hiring a full-time employee that provides special education to all of your students, right? You are utilizing special education. You may hire a tutor or someone doing special education with your child, but you as a school do not provide special education. So always mark no, okay? Now, does your school provide a high school diploma? Yes. You may be really far away from doing that. You might have a first grader and a third grader. So you're years away from giving out a high school diploma, but your school certainly does provide one. If you had a 12th grader, you would provide one. Okay, so for the next part, you're going to think about your youngest child and your oldest child. So what is the lowest grade? So the lowest grade should always be grade 1. Remember, we talked earlier about that we don't want you filing for kindergarten because it's not compulsory. You don't need the legal structure for a kindergartner. And we don't want the government ever thinking, oh, everybody does it anyway, so let's just make it mandatory. We want parents to be able to choose. So do not file for your kindergartner. If you already did, because you hadn't heard me talk before, it's not a problem, no big deal, but just, for future notice, we want grade 1 through 12 because that's what's compulsory. So let's say I have a first grader and let's say a third grader. Okay, so that's what I'm going to say. So whatever your low and your high grades are. Okay. And let's see. And then the classification of the school is always going to be non-religious, even if you teach religion in your school, even if you personally are religious. Okay. We just want non-religious there for your selection. And I'm going to go back to the instructions here. So that was number 11. Choose non-religious. If you choose religious, you have to pick the religion, but we recommend you choose non-religious, even if religion is important to you, for various reasons here that you can read for yourself in the instructions. Okay, so let's go back to the private school affidavit. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and click next. Okay, now if you only have one child, your low grade and your high grade will be the same. Okay, so yeah, there you go. Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? This is not that section. I'm sorry. So here's what's funny. There is a section later where you're going to put in your students' grades. This is the section that talks about what grade your school offers. So you're going to put first and 12th. I'm so sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself here. So first grade and 12th grade. That's what is your school offering here? That's what this section is about. Gosh, I've filed these too many times and I'm already thinking of the next section. So you're going to put first grade and 12th grade for your low and high grade for your school. Okay, so let's hit next and move on. Okay, so now of course you're going to put your address in. Okay, so I'm just going to put any old address in here that I've got saved, and you don't have to do zip4. And same thing for mailing address, same thing. You're just going to put your address in. It's very, very simple and easy here. So you have your physical address and your mailing address. Your physical address must be an actual physical address. Okay, so and obviously they give you this option here also to copy the physical address so that you don't have to type it in twice. So that will save you some time. Okay, the CDE has mentioned that they don't want PO boxes. They have even said that, let's say that you were a family who's world schooling or traveling a lot. If you have one of your family members, one of the parents or guardians of the children, perhaps have a work address here in California, you may use that, but they don't want to see a PO box. That's kind of the main thing, right? So make sure that it's an actual address. Okay, so let's click next. No thanks. Okay, so now you're going to go ahead and put your phone number in. If you don't have a fax number, do not worry about it. Put your primary email. Most of us will not have a website, so don't worry about that. And when it comes to the email, you certainly can create like an actual school email, right? If you want to do something special, you can, but I have always used my actual email and it's just never been a problem. The only emails I ever get from the CDE are about filing this private school affidavit. So you're not going to get spammed or anything like that. So you should be pretty safe using whatever email it is that you'd like to use, okay? Alrighty, so the next step, and this is step 4 of 11, has the school's name changed since last filing? So this is your chance to change it. So mine has not changed, so I will put no, but if you are changing it, this is your chance to do that. And then has the school district changed? So for instance, if I have moved, right, excuse me, if I moved from one district to another, I might go ahead and put yes. Okay, so I was in New Haven School District. Now I'm in Glendale School District or something to that effect. So you would put yes or no for that and then specify which district that was. Okay, so let's move on to the next window. Next, you're going to put your students' ages. So this is where I was kind of getting messed up with the earlier section here. This is where you're going to put in the ages of your students, okay, and what grades they're in. So again, if I had a first grader, then my youngest child might be 6 years and 3 months, right? Or, however many months, right? And then my oldest child might be 8. And you don't need to put the months in for the older child, just for the younger child. If you have one child, let's say you have one child who is 6 years, 3 months, you'll put 6 years, 3 months, and then your oldest is also 6 years old. If you have a 12-year-old, you have a 12-year-old and 2 months and a 12-year-old for your oldest. Okay. All righty. So then down in this part, we're going to put what grades they're in. So as I had sort of said earlier, I was thinking I had a first grader and a third grader perhaps. So I'm going to have one child in first grade and one child in third grade. And remember, always sort of choose the age-related grade. This does not reflect what work they're doing. They could be working behind or ahead. Usually advocate, just putting in the age-related grade, and later on you might have reason to change this if need be. Okay, so one potential reason that you might change this is that we have some younger children who are ready at an earlier age to do community college, for instance, as dual enrollment. And the community college might require that the child be a certain age or in 10th grade. So at that point, your 8th or 9th grader, you may want to place them in 10th grade because they're ready to do community college work. And so by placing them in 10th grade on your private school affidavit, that then makes them eligible to take a dual enrollment class at community college. Okay, so yes, so it'll be up to you as to what you want to choose. Remember, you're the administrator, you're the parent, first of all, but you're the administrator and the record keeper and the teacher of your school, and you determine what grade level your child should be. You can always start out a child in a certain grade, and if you feel like the next year they need to be bumped up or down based on the level of work they're doing, you have the opportunity to change it at that time. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so I entered a first grader and a third grader, and it says total enrollment count 4, which is not, should not, because I put 3, here we go, third grade. 1 child in third grade. And it should, so to make sure that your enrollment count is correct down here, that the enrollment count reflects how many children you actually have, and that you didn't put too many numbers in the grade levels. Okay, now for number 46, you're simply going to put how many students graduated last year from 12th grade. And if you had 0, you will leave that at 0. Okay. Now for this next section, if you are one family member, one guardian, one parent filing this for your children that you're in charge of here and you're educating, you have to have at least 1 full-time teacher, and you can only count yourself once. So every year that I filed, it was just 1 of me. And I never included my husband on the PSA. I mean, he wasn't super involved anyways, but even if he was, you can just file it without. This does not reflect who's actually involved. It's just the creating of your school. And so you do have to have 1 full-time teacher for sure. If you have another parent then who wants to be on it, that parent could then be possibly the administrator or a part-time teacher. Or you could have 2 full-time teachers. It's totally up to you how you want to do this, but at least have 1 full-time teacher, okay? And then make sure your total staff count here at the bottom reflects how many adults there are and that you're not counting yourself several times, okay? All right, so for the next section here, now we're getting into where, this information is going to be repeated several times. So when I filed it, I was the administrator, I was the record keeper, and I was the teacher. So I put my information in multiple times. I just picked, when it gets to the title, I picked administrator. And you can pick whatever you like, though. I mean, you could say you're the director or the headmaster or the president or whatever other title that you would like. And I just picked one title and I stuck with it the whole way through. So you can do that too. And just, be one title the whole way through. So here I am. I've put in my street and my address and my email and all of that as this was site administrator. And then when you scroll down, now it's, oh, well, who's the director and the principal? Well, again, it's me. Right? I'm going to put my information in once again. And again, I am still the administrator. And as we scroll down here, we will hit next. And again, now this is the record keeper. Who keeps the records? Well, again, it's you. So I'm going to put myself in, whoops, Mrs. again, yet again. And here I am yet again. And yet again, I am the administrator or whatever other title that you prefer. Okay. And where are the records located? Well, again, at my home, right? So I'm going to put my home address in there. Okay. So you see how kind of easy this is, right? Okay, I acknowledge that the above mentioned records are maintained at the address stated. Yes, I'm going to check that box. Yes, they are. So, and the records they're talking about are the PSA and the attendance and all the things that we talked about earlier. Okay, so let's hit next and keep going. All righty. If for some reason you get through halfway through this and you're like, oh, I don't have time to finish it right now, just you can leave it up and it should stay up. If it doesn't, just start over again. No big deal. It's not going to save it. It's not going to necessarily save it for you. Now, this one always trips everybody up. Which one of these am I? You are none of the above. You are not tax exempt. Trust me. You are not tax exempt in any way, shape, or form. So homeschool filers will always click none of the above. Okay, unless you have created a nonprofit school that you're educating your children and other people's children, and if you've actually done that, then you might be able to check one of these. But I would say 99.9% of the time, we're all going to check none of the above. Okay. All righty. And remember, I am kind of going off my memory, but let me just click back here again. Here are the instructions, right? So this is you see up here, it's hsc.org/PSA-English. And then it's -N-Espanol for the Spanish one. So the instructions are here. So if you were doing this on your own, all of these instructions are here for you, okay? I'm going by memory, but these instructions are here for you if you need them. If you need to log off or you can't stay for the whole time or you need to file this later, use those instructions, okay? Okay, so we have checked private school, none of the above. We're not tax exempt, so let's click next. We're almost done. We're at step 9 out of 11. Now you have to read and acknowledge all of these things. The first one feels a little scary. All private school affidavits are public documents viewable by the public. However, the CDE has created a separate database for those of us who have 5 or less children. So when you hit submit, our information goes into a different database than the public one. So there is a public online tool where anyone, you, I, or anyone can go and look up a private school in California. However, ours are in a different database. Now, technically it's still public. If I went down to the CDE office and asked to look, I would be able to see your information. So there are some options there. If perhaps there's domestic violence, that would be one situation that you might want to keep your information private, for instance. Then there are other options to keep your information private, perhaps signing up with a charter school, signing up with a PSP. Those types of ways are ways that you can keep your information private. So know that it's public and yet it's still pretty darn private. Okay. So I'm not going to read through every single one of these. That's kind of the main one that I wanted that you to know about. So go ahead and look through this on your own time. And, you're supposed to keep a copy of this PSA for 3 years. So, when you do file it, just keep that on your computer or print it out, that kind of thing. And then you will, of course, you can't go forward if you don't acknowledge that you've read all of these. So you will click that you acknowledge all of these. Now, the last one is one last one that I do want to go over. It's the very last one on this list. And it's that the students enrolled are full-time students and they are not enrolled elsewhere. Okay. This is why it's so important to unenroll your child first from any other school. And this is also why schools are incorrect if and when, because I know it's been happening and I've been emailing a lot of districts recently. Some of the districts are misunderstanding how this works, and they are saying, oh, you need to show us your PSA before we can unenroll. But this alone tells you that you cannot do it in that order. You have to be unenrolled first, and then you can file the private school affidavit. Now, if for some reason you didn't unenroll and you filed the PSA, again, there are no private school police that are coming to get you. However, if we're going to do it in the correct order, this would be the correct order, that you unenroll first and then you file, because technically you are filing for an established school. Your school is established, your children are enrolled, and then you file this PSA so that you can attest when you click this button at the end that your child is not enrolled elsewhere. Okay. And I do ask people to email me directly if they need help with that, with any district that's giving them trouble about that. My email is info@hsc.org. Okay, so let's go to the next thing because we are almost done. And once again, you're going to put your name here because you are the head of the school / owner, and my title was administrator, right? And my email. And you're going to input some sort of a security, security question. Let's say Superman. Oh, look, I've done it before. Okay, not my favorite place. My childhood hero was Superman. Okay, and you will hit review. Now the review is just for you to look over everything and make sure it all looks good. You filed it the way you want to file it. The name is correct. You've got the right district. You should be able to just, they actually used to have a lookup tool right here on the private school affidavit. It doesn't look like they have that anymore, but you should be able to just do a search and just say, school district 4 and put your address in, right? Or your street name in or something, or for your city. And you should be able to locate what your school district is. I know there are a few people who had questions about that. It's coeducational, day only. The grades offered in your school are 1 to 12, even if you don't have those grade levels. You're non-religious. And then of course, look at how many times you put your address in, and then the grades that your children are. Your staff always have at least one full-time teacher, and your children's names are nowhere on this form. Isn't that interesting? So imagine if you were a private school with 1,000 students. They don't want to put their students' names in there. That would be very time consuming. So yes, you're just simply a school indicating how many students you have enrolled to let the state know this information. That's it. Okay. So at this point, I will not hit submit because I am not going to actually be filing this year. So I'm going to hit cancel, but you will hit submit. And if you're ready to go, hit submit. And you can copy this, you can print to a file if you'd like to keep all this information. But really the main thing that you need to keep is the actual email that you get, the confirmation email, which you should get almost immediately. Okay. Let's say for some reason you didn't, or it goes to junk and you can never retrieve it. And you're like, oh gosh, Jamie, I know I submitted it, but I have not gotten a confirmation. I would just advise you go back in and do it again. Maybe use a different email so that if it is getting caught by junk mail, that it doesn't happen again. So yes, you will have filed twice, but again, there are no private school police that are going to come and arrest you for this. Okay. Also, I want to address very quickly that someone mentioned that, oh, what if I didn't file last year? What if by accident I operated as a private school last year? I kept the records. I unenrolled from my old school. I was homeschooling and home educating my child. What if I didn't file last year? But here I am right now filing, right? What if that happened? Well, it's no big deal because it's sort of like if you were speeding on the freeway 2 weeks ago. They can't give you a ticket for that today, right? They have to catch you in the act doing that. So it's kind of similar. You were still at school, your child was still educated. You just didn't do that one last step of complying with being a small private school, but you are now. So what's important is that you do it now, okay? So that you are filing now for the coming year and every year subsequent to now that you are going to continue homeschooling. So just make sure you continue to file for every year in the future, but it's kind of, let bygones be bygones. If you didn't file in the past, it's not a problem that you didn't file this time around, okay? So I'm going to hit cancel. Yes, I am sure I want to cancel my affidavit because I don't need to file one this year. So hopefully you got some sort of a notification that it was filed. If you did, go ahead and file it. And that is it. Let me go ahead and see if there's any questions that I missed in the